Begin tonight with the attacks on Kabul airport, as U.S. and British government officials are warning people to stay away from their only avenue of escape. A British interpreter, now in hiding after the collapse of Kabul, is speaking out about his dire situation.
Left here, I will be killed by them as soon as they find me. So it will be very important for me to get as soon as possible to the UK, because I worked for 3 years with the British forces, and so the Taliban will never, ever leave me alive.
Joining us now with more on this, former U.S. Navy officer and retired New Jersey Police Lieutenant Steve Rogers. Steve, first of all, I want to read to you a statement President Trump released. Again, he does a statement before Biden, and we're going to put it up on the screen. He says, "Melania and I send our deepest condolences to the families of our brilliant and brave service members whose duty to the USA meant so much to them. Our thoughts are also with the families of the innocent civilians who died today in the savage Kabul attack. This tragedy should never have been allowed to happen, which makes our grief even deeper and more difficult to understand. May God bless the USA." Steve, when you see what's going on, this was preventable.
It certainly was. I spent 25 years of my life in the United States Navy as a naval officer working for the Office of Naval Intelligence. Yes, it could have been prevented. This was either a complete act of stupidity on the part of the White House or gross incompetence on the part of the U.S. military being led by General Mark Milley. You know, some of this rests at his foot, at his seat. He's the leader of the military of this country. He should have made sure our troops were prepared. He did not. This would have never, ever happened under the leadership of President Trump. Believe me, it would have never happened.
It would have never happened because we would have never evacuated the military first and left all those people there. They were sitting targets. Of course that base would be a target, people wanting to leave. Why wasn't our military more prepared for this? Why did this was just waiting to happen?
You know, to begin with, we all talked about the backwards evacuation. You first remove your civilians and your embassy and then your military. That's number one. Number two, there were no protection forces set up in the event that the Taliban or ISIS would strike at the base. But what is even more troubling, how is it that the United States intelligence agencies claim they had no idea that ISIS, Al-Qaeda, ISIS-K, and the Taliban were going to overrun that country within days and not months? I don't buy it. I don't buy it. And there needs to be an intense investigation as to the who, what, when, where, and why this happened.
Who's going to investigate it? Because these so-called intelligence people, they're not even talking to the American people. They're not talking to Congress. They're not even talking to our allies. What really is going on right now? They've been quiet all day for hours. Obviously, these terrorists are going to keep doing it. There's been no retaliation.
Well, to begin with, the Republicans, because that's all we can go to right now in the United States Congress, have to raise hell. I'll tell you, I'm a little disappointed that I haven't really heard really hell being raised over this. Our young men and women are being put in harm's way without protection. So we need to make sure that our representatives hear from us. And look, I've encouraged people, make that phone call. Don't think your voice don't count, because they are concerned about votes, nothing else. Let them know that you're going to just throw them right out of office if they do not take a stand with regard to this disastrous act on the part of President Biden.
And Nancy Pelosi, she's talking women's rights today. What about the women's rights there on the ground? What about the children? What about the military personnel who have pretty much been abandoned? They have been abandoned by our so-called leadership. These deaths, we saw no deaths in Afghanistan under President Trump. And now, when you see it, this should never have happened. This is on Biden.
Look, President Trump projected strength, absolute strength. He put the fear of God in the hearts of our enemies. President Biden comes in and he projects weakness to a point that the Chinese Communist Party already sent a message to Taiwan saying, look at your friends, look at the Americans, look what they're not doing for their allies. Then he decides to send a carrier group near the Taiwan border. He decides to send fighter jets over Taiwan airspace. Believe me, this is just the beginning. And now, since the gates are open for refugees just to flow into America without really being vetted, I shudder to think what may be happening in the months to come. We are facing very serious challenges.
You're right. The terror is going to come to our shores. We took for granted almost the stop of terror because President Trump did obliterate the ISIS caliphate. We didn't have any of this. Now, Biden's unleashing it on the world. This refugee crisis, so many people, the estimates even that there could be millions that want to leave, that could actually claim refugee status. What's going to happen? Because we're run by a bunch of incompetents right now.
Well, yes, we are. And unfortunately, Afghanistan will now be the epicenter of terrorist training. You've got ISIS, you've got ISIS-K, you got the Taliban, you got Al-Qaeda. I mean, just come on in, guys, and we're going to train you how to destroy America. So what's going to happen? I'll tell you what should happen. And I don't say this lightly. Americans were killed today. American Marines were killed today. That should be met with the absolute overwhelming force of the United States military. We ought to just do what we got to do, use our military to destroy them once and for all. That's what has to be done. That's the only language terrorists understand.
Why do you think the Biden administration is standing down and just being quiet about this? Why has there been no public show of force, as would have happened if they'd ever dared to do anything under the Trump administration?
Look, I'm convinced now more than ever that Joe Biden, he just doesn't have the mental capacity to lead. And I don't say that lightly. I don't say it making it fun at him. He just does not have the mental capacity to lead. And what we see here is a group of incompetents that have taken control of our government, and now it's costing us lives. So how do you fix it? The American people, despite what we've seen in the past, you got to go vote. We got to do things within the Constitution. We have the power. The people have the power. Go vote, throw them all out of office, and replace them with people of like mind who will indeed put America first.
When you look at it, when President Trump calls it the crime of the century, what happened in November 3rd, it is, because when you look at what's happening to the world right now, none of this would have happened. We would have had peace. We were working on peace. Even with Iran, we would have had peace. And now we're not even just going back to the years of the endless wars. This is worse than that, because this time America is standing down, and our allies, they've never experienced this before, with America really being absent from the world scene after America created this tragedy.
You know, it's amazing. Joe Biden and his Democrat Socialist Party were criticizing President Trump day in and day out with regard to NATO. I remember they said, well, he's disrupting NATO. He's alienated our allies. No, he did not. He brought NATO together. Isn't it ironic that Joe Biden has really destroyed the NATO alliance? Right. Those people don't even trust us. The British Parliament apparently voted not to support the U.S. government as long as Joe Biden is in office. Could you imagine that?
You're right. And when you look at it, it's who's going to take the place of America in the world. It's frightening because it looks like it's the terrorists right now, evil that is dictating to the rest of the world. And everybody's really left leaderless. And it's a frightening thing to see, especially for our military. They're so brave and they fight to protect us. They want to protect us. And the fact that Biden's put them in harm's way and that we lost them today, it's irreparable.
Well,
Steve.
One more thing.
Yes.
We're Americans. Remember that. We've been through hell and high water. We're going to come back, and we're going to come back strong. Americans always win.
Absolutely. God bless you, Steve, and God bless everyone. Thank you for your service to our country.
Thank you.
And coming up next on The Real Story.